In this video, I'm going to be giving you my pretty subjective review of the Super73 RX. I'll share with you my buying experience, if I think it's worth it, what I like about the bike, and what I don't like as much. A couple of things we're not going to touch on would be the competition that's out there for the bike, and we're not going to take a deep dive into the specs of the bike. Let's get into it. If you're new here, or if you're not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you find this useful, make sure you hit that like button. Before we dive into it, I just want to mention a couple of modifications I've made. I haven't modified very much, but I do want to make sure that I call that out. I changed the seat. The RX comes with a one-person seat with a little bit of a bump here, and it's a little bit shorter. This is the 2-up seat. You can order it separately, but it comes on the S2. I was able to trade with my friend who has an S2. I added this rear view mirror here, and I've added the pegs. Other than that, I haven't made any changes to the bike. So I've had my eye on Super 73s for a few years now. I wanted to get the S2 in Hudson Blue since the initial launch video that they put out. I think that was towards the end of 2019 or maybe early 2020. And I probably should have bought it then because there were some discounts on it. But I wasn't sure if it was worth the money, and I didn't have anybody to ride with. A friend of mine bought the S2 right before I bought the RX, which is what pushed me over the edge to get one. Unfortunately, when I ordered, all the S2s were on back order, and I'm very impatient, so I just bumped up to the RX. So do I think Super 73, or more specifically the RX, is worth it? I don't think there's an easy answer to that. A couple things I want to mention before I give my opinion on it is, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I didn't do a lot of homework on the competition out there. You might be able to get a comparable bike or a better bike or maybe a near comparable bike for a cheaper price. So make sure you do your homework. Additionally, there's some features that the Super 73 offers that you might not need. Some people might be able to get away with having pedal assist only, and they don't need the throttle, or they don't need a battery that size or a motor that puts out the output of this bike. You have to do your homework. You have to figure out what you want in the bike. You have to figure out what your budget is, make your decision from there. What I will say for me is the RX is $3,495, and that is a ton of money. And I went back and forth on buying this bike and the S2. As I mentioned, for over a year, I was contemplating buying the S2. I put this in my cart and went to check out probably 5 times before I actually did check out. It was a ton of money for me, and I was fortunate enough to have some money saved up that I was able to put towards this and not have it affect my lifestyle. So I'm lucky in that regard. The other thing I'll mention is I typically have buyer's remorse almost instantly after I make a large purchase, and I haven't had that with the RX, and which makes me want to say that for me personally, the RX has been worth it. I've also found areas that I'm familiar with, I've done more exploring. I've ridden farther than I would on a normal bike. I've noticed things, or I've taken trails that you can't see from the car. So I really enjoyed kind of just cruising around and learning more about the local area. And to piggyback on the making it worth it and the exploration points that I made, if you're so inclined, you can fit 2 people on the bike. I want to say the weight capacity is 325. I had no problem with power with 2 people on the bike. Over a long distance, it did get a little bit uncomfortable, but I guess that's to be expected when you ride 2 people on the bike of this size. All right, now let's talk through what I like about the bike. What I want to mention first is the suspension. I made the assumption that I wasn't going to need the suspension because I don't really plan on taking the bike off-road. And I can't tell you how glad I am that I have the suspension. When you get up to speed on this bike, when you're going 20 to 30 miles an hour and you hit a little pothole or there's a crack in the road, suspension really softens that for you. It makes the world of a difference from a comfort perspective, but also I feel like it makes it a little bit more safe because it's absorbing some of that and it's not as rigid on you, the rider. Next, let's talk about the fat tires. Another assumption I made was the fat tires were just there to kind of go with the vibe of the bike. That was an assumption I had before I rode the bike. I feel like the fat tires, from a functional perspective, really exceeded my expectations. When you do go over potholes, you're going up and down curbs, it makes the ride more comfortable. Additionally, I feel like it saved when I was cruising and I hit a pothole. Next, let's talk about the battery. I think Super 73 says you can get about 40 miles on a charge with throttle only if you're cruising at 20 miles an hour. I have no complaints about the battery or the distances that you're able to go on one charge. Coupled with the battery, I guess, is the motor. Again, I'm really happy with the motor. This motor, I believe, has 1200 watt nominal power, 2000 watt peak power. And when you get going, I think the power's there. I weigh about 180 pounds and I can easily hit 30 on a full charge. I have seen it tick up to 31 and maybe 32 miles an hour, maybe faster on a downhill. I have seen some videos online where riders say it does lack torque. There were some hills that I've been on where I don't want to say the bike struggled, but you could tell it was taxing the motor. I also heard that the new ZX feels torquier and that we might get an update for these bikes to get a little bit more torque on the low end. Next, let's talk about the brakes. These are 4-piston hydraulic brakes. I think the brakes are a good fit for a bike with this kind of power. In my opinion, I feel like it has great stopping power. I feel like they're a little bit noisy. A lot of people online say that they're noisy. So if you guys do order yourself one, make sure you look up a couple of videos on bedding the brakes. It's really just breaking in the brakes properly to hopefully improve performance and reduce that squeaking noise. A couple things that I want to mention would be the grips. And the other thing is the little LCD screen. I generally only use it to monitor my speed and my battery charge level. Something that I'm really impressed with that might be underrated would be the kickstand. I've had normal bikes where you get the bike and the kickstand is virtually useless. If you don't position the bike perfectly or if something knocks into it, the bike falls over. I'm really happy with the kickstand on this. Definitely supports the bike. All right, let's talk about the lights real quick. The RX comes with a headlight and a taillight. When you have the lights on, it turns on the headlight and it has the taillight as a steady on, but it gets brighter when you hit the brakes, which I like. And the last thing I want to talk about from the pros list is the look of the bike. I feel like Super 73s in general, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I really like the look of the S2. It has more of a laid back look. It may draw less attention. I feel like the RX stands out a little bit more. It has kind of like a dirt bike motocross vibe. But I am really happy with the Carmine red. It's more of a satin finish on the red. And it's not super glossy. I like that touch a lot. I like this color red. I also think the Rhino Gray is pretty cool as well. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things I don't like as much. The first thing that comes to mind is price. Did I mention earlier in the video that I think it's worth it? Yes, I think it's worth it. I don't regret buying it, but it is a big price tag and I wish it was a little bit less expensive. Another con that I already mentioned was how aggressive the bike looks. I'm not going to repeat myself, but the one thing I will say is that one of the ways I was thinking of making it a little bit less aggressive was maybe chopping this rear fender off. Obviously leaving the rear tail light. Another less than positive item might be, this doesn't bother me at all. I've never thought to myself, oh man, I can't believe how sloppy these cables are, but I've seen people online that really do have a gripe with all the cables that are coming out of the front of the bike and the cable management. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it down in here. I mean, they do run cables through the frame of the bike, and I think that was a great idea. I think that they can only do so much. And I think the last potentially negative item on the bike is the seat. As I had mentioned earlier, the RX comes with a different seat. The 2-up seat I like maybe a little bit more because you can kind of adjust forward and back in your riding position a little bit more than you can on the stock RX seat. So even if I wasn't going to have a passenger on the bike, I think I'd pick the 2-up seat over that single seat. I know there's third-party seats out there that potentially could be more comfortable. I haven't had the chance to try any of them out. Maybe I will in the future, and I'll be sure to update you guys. But I have nothing to compare these seats against, and generally speaking, I'm pretty happy with the 2-up seat. A couple closing comments for you guys. One, and this might be the case with the e-bike community in general, but I know that Super 73 has a pretty big community. I haven't done any group rides. I haven't really looked for any group rides, but I haven't done any group rides yet. But you can see online that there are some group rides in different areas, and that might be cool to be a part of that. If you've been thinking about getting one and you live in an area where you can get good use out of it and it's not going to break the bank for you, I would definitely encourage the purchase. If you have any questions, make sure you leave a comment down below. Also let me know if you want to see a comparison video between the RX and the S2. If you found this video informative or beneficial, make sure you crush that like button. If you're not already, make sure you subscribe and click here for another one of our great reviews. Thanks. We'll see you in the next one.